Hello everybody, it's Stewart A. Swerdlow
and Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow
for expansions.com, and this is our news podcast for the middle of September 2012. And there's just so many different stories to talk about, so I'm just going to start with the first one that I have available. And this week, a few days ago, they announced, very strangely, that they found a 23,000-year-old mammoth buried 100 meters underneath the ground in permafrost in Siberia. Now, how you just happened to find that is beyond my understanding. But they also said that in this they found this mammoth body and with live cells. Now, okay, it's 23,000 years old. How could there be living cells in this mammoth body? What was it eating? What was it living on? And they said they're going to clone the live cells and make mammoths come back to life again. Now, we've heard this so many times before, and I've told everyone the story that back in 1999, when I was doing the workshops in Oslo, Norway, there was a story in the newspaper there in 1999 that said Russian and Japanese scientists had found, again, a frozen mammoth, and that they were taking the cells and cloning it, and that they had implanted it into an African elephant that they had in captivity, and that the African elephant was just about to give birth to this woolly mammoth. And then, of course, there was nothing after that, no story after that. And that was 13 years ago. And since then, in the last couple of years, I've heard several stories about cloning woolly mammoths, but no one has yet shown a picture of the woolly mammoth baby that was born. So here we go again. They keep imprinting. Now it's just about every few months about woolly mammoths and finding frozen ones and cloning them and wanting to bring this back. So what do you think about that? I think it is bringing back the Ice Age imprinting, because they know the Ice Age is coming, and we know the woolly mammoths were around at the time of the last Ice Age. And they have the cartoons about Ice Age 1, 2, 3, maybe they're up to 4 already, and there's always a woolly mammoth in there. What's up with the hairy elephants, okay? So something's going on with that. What do you think that's about?
Well, it's interesting because that was my story too.
Well, I usurped, I snubbed your story, I scooped your story.
Yeah, you did.
And that'll teach you. You're trying to take stories away from me, because she's always trying to get more stories than I do and upstage me. And I just said, I don't care because I'm still the pretty one. Anyway, next thing is going into cold imprinting. Just yesterday, they announced that there's a blizzard on Mars. Yes, first they tell you there's no weather on Mars, it's a desert, it has no water. Now all of a sudden there's water, there were oceans, and now there's a big blizzard going on in the southern hemisphere by the south pole of Mars. But they said the snow on Mars is from carbon dioxide instead of water molecules. It's from carbon dioxide molecules, so that they said the snow on Mars would be like soap flakes that would come down. But we kind of have that here in the Great Lakes, don't we?
Sometimes.
So maybe we actually are connected to Mars here in the Great Lakes, because we have like soap flakes coming down in the wintertime.
I think there's an interdimensional portal from here to Mars.
That's what I think. And actually, let me just skip down to another cold story, because there's been a lot of cold stories on the news this week. Antarctica. They have recorded the highest amount of ice ever in Antarctica. So, hello, what about global warming? They were doing a story about how global warming is going to affect the poor little penguins. And then they come out with, well, there's more ice and snow in Antarctica than ever before. So what's going on with that story? It's being kept quiet. Only a couple of news services have reported it. Of course, AccuWeather and National Weather Service, they drop the story. They don't report on it. They keep it quiet. But they tend to focus on the ice loss in the North Pole, in the Arctic Ocean. And again, very humorously, they always focus on that in what? summertime. Yes, of course there's going to be ice loss at the North Pole in summertime. And I will just say, I just on this trip, when I was flying home from Iceland, went across Greenland, and that was in early September, covered in snow, Greenland. No, didn't look like there was any loss of ice or snow there. It was all white and covered in snow and ice. So I don't know what kind of stories they think people, maybe they think people don't travel anymore, but if you go there, you'll see it. And just as an aside, here it is mid-September. It's pretty cold here in the Great Lakes, and in fact, some parts of the Midwest this morning had their first freeze and frost. And according to the Weather Service, tonight in northern Michigan might see their first snowflakes in mid-September. So there you go as far as global warming is concerned. It's the earliest snow I've heard of in Michigan before, but there you go. And let me continue on. I'll kind of ease into warmer things. And the next thing that you should know about is there are two large volcanoes in Indonesia which are in the process of major eruptions. Now, as we have reported it many times before, when large volcanoes erupt and send ash and dust into the atmosphere, that does eventually cover the entire Earth in the atmosphere, the ionosphere, that blocks more sunlight, causes the ground to be more cold, and then you have colder winters. And back in the early 1800s when Krakatoa erupted in Indonesia, it sent such a huge amount of ash and dust into the atmosphere that for 2 years after that there was almost no summer at all on the Earth. It snowed even in June in the northern hemisphere, and there was ice until then. So again, kind of keeps in line what the Russians were saying about an ice age starting in 2014, and we're just a year and a half away from that.
What about the volcano that's erupting in Ecuador as well? There's
volcanoes in Ecuador, Costa Rica,
Of course,
Alaska.
they just had that huge earthquake too down there in Central America.
Yes, a 7.6 earthquake.
Actually 7.9, and they reduced it.
Of course, they always reduce it. Excuse me, Elke is discussing something with Natasha, and of course they get into very heated political discussions, and Elke is very vocal, so you might hear them arguing in the background about that. Also, going into some volatile hot news, you know, I think I might have mentioned on the website about the revolt, the Arab revolt around the world, I should say Islamic reaction to that movie that was made by this person in California who was recently released from prison, uses a fake name, claimed to be an Israeli Coptic Christian, when in fact he is not an Israeli whatsoever.
If he even made the movie.
Well, he did make the movie because the actors and actresses that were in the film said that he fooled them, telling them it was one thing when it turned out to be something else. But again, they were in the film, they know what the dialogue was about,
right.
You know.
So everything is
they're
staged.
doing damage control so no one attacks them. But, you know, I have to question, and I put this on the website this week, the reaction of Muslim people all over the world. You know, if you're a Muslim person, that's fine, but you know, I have to question, why is there such reaction in the Muslim world every time something goes against the Muslims? You know, if the Iranians made an anti-Christian movie and trashed Christ, would there be riots in Europe and North America? I don't think so. I don't think anyone really paid attention to it. So, or if someone trashed Buddha, would there be a reaction in Tibet? So you have to look at the reaction. What's going on with you people? Are you acting like mindless robots who are told to riot and kill and plunder because someone said something you don't like? Have to look at that.
But,
I'm sorry,
you know,
but that's the that's my opinion on that.
But there could be people that have been implanted amongst that group to, like, they used to do the same thing for the riots in the 60s, that people were undercover from, they wanted to get things started, so they got people riled up.
Well, and so I did post yesterday on the website about historical research that says that the first reference to Allah was actually in 1700 BC by the Babylonians. and it was basically referred to as an aggressive alien god with connections to Ishtar and Venus and Isis, and basically reptilian belief system. So I have to do more research on that. But any of you out there who know about that, I'd be curious to know if what you know about the very first mention of Allah. As we know, Muhammad, the Islamic prophet, I believe was creating his belief system around 500 AD or so, and then it was around the 800s that they started their invasions of Europe and the rest of the Middle East to convert everyone to Islam. So I'd be curious to know really where it began. Was it a Babylonian invention? And if so, what else came out of Babylon? The Hebrew religion, Muslim religion, the Trinity. So, Babylon really was the source of a lot of all the world major religions, and of course they were all reptilian based. And we also know from my Blue Blood book that Babylon, being a derivative of Sumer, were colonists from the Martian refugees. So read Blue Blood and you'll find out about that. And why don't we go into your news now before I go into some of my announcements after that.
All right. The first thing that I want to mention is that I kind of get a kick out of some of you who write in and say, oh, sex, sex, sex. Is that all Janet can talk about?
Oh, that was me. I said
that was that you?
Yes.
Well, the reason I said about that is because that must be what's standing on your mind, because I also talk about a lot of other things. I give you the political news, I give you the alien news, I give you the Nazi news, I give you health news, I give you all kinds of stuff.
Nazi news. That could be a thing on TV.
I do.
Nazi news.
So anyway, pay attention, please, to some of the other stories that I'm giving you, because the idea is not for one to override the other, but so that you can see, again, the trends and how they eventually do all tie together. So anyway, with that said, I will start with some news which does not have to do about sex, so you'll be happy
finally,
about that.
I don't have to be embarrassed.
So you sound like everybody else.
Yeah, I'm the one that writes that. I just have different names.
That's true. That I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, well anyway, the first story I have to tell you about is that, as expected, the New York City Board of Health officially passed Mayor Bloomberg's controversial plan to limit the size of large sugary drinks this past Thursday. Now, this was expected. Under the plan, all the restaurants, the fast foods, the deli, movie theaters, sports stadiums, food carts will be barred from selling any sugar-sweetened drinks in cups larger than 16 ounces. So, this does not apply to the grocery store sales, to diet sodas, of course, with all their wonderful nutrition value in there.
But you know why he did that, Bloomberg? He's only like this big himself, so he probably couldn't lift a 16-ounce cup.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, it says that dairy drinks containing more than 50% milk will be allowed. So, it kind of goes on and on and on. But the interesting thing is that this is the precursor to actually legislating food. Because remember what I've been telling you, the government wants you dependent on them. That's one reason why they've been eliminating certain wild game and things like that. You cannot sell wild game except under certain circumstances. They're saying that the wild game, of course, has got all kinds of diseases and so on and so forth. And they're trying to figure out what people will accept. So they're using the obesity, which of course has nothing to do with things like this. You should watch our webinars or participate if you want to know the real story about what's creating obesity in America, and it is not what they're telling you. So it has to do about legislating food, and they want control over that. And again, I'm going to refer to Scott Westerfeld's series, The Pretties and the Uglies. It's a great book.
I was one of the pretties.
Yeah, you won't even read this series, so you don't know.
They based the pretties on me. Yeah. I know that.
So anyway, I do want you to be aware of these trends, because first of all, they talked about taking away obese children from their parents, because that is child abuse. And again, it's other issues.
I wish someone had taken me away from my parents.
That sounds terrible. Okay.
I don't know. You should know. You do know my parents.
Next up, but I'm not commenting. Next up, the astral. Now remember what I keep telling you, this is going to be a big part of New World religion. So I was kind of looking through the headlines of all the headlines just this past week, and these are just a few, but listen to this. Ghostly visitor, a blessing or a curse. Animal walks around after death. The scariest apparition yet. Now this was on the Dead Files, which is a TV show on the Travel Channel of all places, and it described this scariest apparition as having 3 heads, wings, blah blah. That reminded me of the story of the conjoined twins I'm going to tell you. What we talked about, they have 2 heads and 1 body. I reported on that last week. But this is, again, getting you used to seeing things that are different and astral apparitions. And we continue with the headlines. Woman gets message from husband. The channeling is big. The mediums on television are big that channeling on from the dead. Little girl attacked by spirits. And then we have an exorcism magazine that was actually launched in Poland. And I saved the name for you. That's the name.
Exorcista focuses on Catholic priests.
No, that's just the name right there.
Exorcista.
Right. And this particular magazine right now is going to, Stewart announced, focus on Catholic priests and devil possession. So again, you're going to find more and more astral things. Don't ask me. Anyway, you're going to find more and more of this coming your way. So don't be surprised, but again, keep your minds open and take a look at what's real and what's not real and do your protection work. Keep yourself protected and go to your higher source. Don't let this lower stuff influence you. Okay, alien life. That's always of interest to us. Life may be able to survive on a broader set of alien worlds than astronomers had previously thought. You know, again, they keep widening that zone about what can be inhabitable and what cannot. So lo and behold, they have a new online tool called, quote, the Habitable Zone Gallery. It looks at every known exoplanetary system. How can they do that? Aren't there like millions of them?
Billions. Yeah.
And just and they have created these ranges where that water can exist and not exist and so forth, because they're looking for, of course, something that's planet-like.
But of course, they're assuming that life has to be like our life.
Well, no, now they're changing that now, because they're saying some organisms can basically drop their metabolism to 0 to survive very long-lasting cold conditions. And we also know that they can some of them can withstand very extreme heat conditions if they have a protective layer of rock and water. So they're starting to expand what can support life, let's say.
But even so, they're assuming that life needs to be shielded from the heat or can't survive in the cold. There might be ice creatures that live in the ice and the cold, or heat creatures. You know?
Well, even one thing that I learned through the work that we have done, if you remember, we used to have a fellow that sold the pitchers, remember, on our site, that would actually clean your water up. They glazed it with certain
bacteria.
Yes, that actually survived.
Ate the toxins.
Yes, and it actually survived in volcanic lava flow, which I didn't know that until this fellow brought this to my attention. So there are ways that life can exist even here on Earth that they're not telling you about, much less on other planets. But watch for this again. They're looking for quote-unquote Earth-like planets that will support life, or now they're expanding that to say that there may be other ways that life can exist that we haven't thought about. Surprise, surprise. Okay, life on Mars. This kind of goes back to what you were talking about, but a little different aspect of it. Now they're saying there's a recent discovery of what they're calling iron blueberries, which are small spherical hematite balls by the NASA.
So there you go with sexual stuff again.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, you said you weren't going to do
That's
it.
you, silly. You are the one writing in. I know now. They found that these iron blueberries could not have plausibly been created without the existence of microbes on Mars.
So are you going to do a podcast, cook something like that?
Mars blueberries?
Mars blueberries.
No, well, you know, there are bull testicles that they call balls.
Again with the, you know,
Rocky Mountain oyster.
If
you're going to bring it up, I'm going to give it back to you. Rocky Mountain oyster, guys.
Blueberry balls, testicles. For goodness sake.
Tune in for my next edition of Cooking with Janet's podcast. You might
God
learn
knows
something.
what she's cooking this time. I'm keeping myself protected.
I should say you should. Okay.
Remember, she used to take rubber bands and
tell everybody
castrate bulls
everything you know.
when she was a farmer.
That's right. That's how I keep you in line.
I don't keep my rubber bands in this house.
My little rubber band machine by the side of my bed. Okay. Antimatter spaceships could make long flights before end of century. Okay, remember just last week I told you...
I might need to take one of those flights if you have a rubber band around here.
Remember last week I told you that there was going to be this 100-year interstellar meeting, you know, within 100 years. And I said, you watch, you know, oh, it was 100. Oh, no, I meant 10. Oh, 1. Now, here we go. Antimatter spaceships could make long flights before end of century. So they're already changing that. Just from last week, nuclear fusion reactions sparked by beams of antimatter could be propelling ultra-fast spaceships on long journeys before the end of the century.
Before that.
Yes, but that's what they're telling you. And now, again, look at here. Now they're saying they could reach Jupiter within 4 months, potentially opening up parts of the outer solar system to manned exploration.
A couple of Akas, I could reach Jupiter like in an hour. Seriously.
Yeah. So anyway, as I told you, the spaceship travel is changing much faster than what they want you to believe. All right, water's turning red. We reported on this to you a couple weeks ago, I think. And so there was something that I actually saw on Facebook, your favorite social media network. And it was talking about the Yangtze River in China turning red on 9/7 of 2012. Then they also showed a picture in the San Angelo River in Texas turning red on the 2nd of August in 2012. And they have a river in Alberta, Canada that turned red on the 26th. So what is up with all this stuff that's coming out of the earth is what I would say at this point. Doesn't it sound like things are opening up?
You know what? Every one of those places, either nearby or underneath them, has had earthquakes recently. And I would not be surprised, and I've said this before, that there's magma coming up, and that would make the water turn red.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is, what else are we talking about? The red planet of Mars. So, excuse me, it could all be extremely ritualistic and opening stuff up. And again, getting you accustomed to things that are different than what you're normally accustomed to.
The first cover story was that there was a chemical release from a factory that made the water turn red, but why would all these rivers around the world start turning red at the same time approximately?
Yeah.
So that's not the answer.
There are other things going on, which we all know, but the idea is to, again, watch the trends and try and figure out what the message is that they're sending to us, because they do speak in color, tone, and archetype, which is exactly what we teach you. But we teach you with the positive, they use it for the negative. So keep your eyes open. Okay, next I want to tell you about the White House Big Dig. Now, we reported on this about 2 years ago when this first started, when it said that they were doing actually about $86 million worth of renovations to the West Wing of the White House. And they're telling you that this is about doing sewers and this kind of things. But what they're telling us now is, let me find my place here. Okay, what reporters and photographers saw during the construction appeared to go well beyond what the GSA, or General Services Administration, is saying to replace aging water and steam lines, sewers, storm sewers, electrical wiring, heating, air conditioning, fire control equipment, blah, blah. The reporters and photographers said it went well beyond that. They said a sprawling multi-story structure whose underground assembly required truckload after truckload of heavy-duty concrete and steel beams. Now, the GSA says that the structure is merely facilitating the utility work, but neither the agency nor the administration will elaborate on the function. So there were some guesses what they were doing: additional office space, a bomb shelter.
It could just be Obama's man cave.
Yeah, that could be. That's a new thing. Maybe he's redefining masculinity for us.
Because he probably needs to get away from her sometimes. I've heard bad stories about her.
I'm sure they're just put together for public consumption anyway.
Yes, that's his man
Has
cave.
nothing to do with love. Anyway, it says the GSA went to great lengths to keep the work secret. They not only put up the fence around the excavation site, but they also ordered subcontractors not to talk to anyone and to tape over company info on trucks pulling into the White House gates. Now, remember what I told you originally, $86 million. Now they're saying future phases of the project, the total price tag will top $376 million. Wow. They're expected to involve more excavation elsewhere on the North Lawn. So again, they're refusing to identify the next major work area, that's what they're speculating, or to say when construction will begin. They said the scope of any additional work in the west and east wings has not been determined, so the timing obviously has not been finalized. So how do they know that the total price tag then is going to top $376 million if they don't know what they're doing? So anyway, so be on the lookout. Again, these are trends. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, of course.
Well, if I'm paying for it, I want to know what it is.
Yeah, but you
don't
get to know anymore.
They better let me know.
In fact, you know what that is written in the U.S. Constitution, that it is actually the state's obligation to overthrow any government that starts acting outside of its realm and not for the people. That's written in the U.S.
Yeah,
Constitution.
but the Constitution doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it doesn't, but that's the law. It's not. Well, we won't get into that because that's a lot of
But
stuff.
that's true. That's just proof that it's gone.
Yeah. Well, but that's things that people will be bringing up because there is increasingly more unrest here in the U.S., which, of course, as we know, is artificially manufactured. But people are buying into all the artificial manufacturing
I
stuff.
remember you said they had that article in 2016. There was going to be a revolution.
Yes, we reported on that. So, they're preparing everybody, everything. And speaking of which, I also told you about the zombie apocalypse that they're preparing for. We talked about the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, security from Halo, interesting, Corporation announced that 1,000 military personnel, police officials, medical experts, and federal workers will learn the ins and outs of a zombie apocalypse as part of an annual counterterrorism summit, according to the Military Times. So, zombies are here to stay, and of course, at the end of October, Halloween is coming up. And so they're staging all this. Remember, Halloween is a big ritual time.
I think that's the president.
Yeah, I think
He's
so.
very upset, like you said.
Now the dogs are going to sing along with it. There you go. They're discussing with the president who should answer the phone. I think Elkie wants to talk to him this time. And Natasha talked to him last time. Actually, they're practicing toning for our upcoming seminar. Pick me, no, pick me. Who shall we bring to tone with us at the seminar? All right, I guess they've decided.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll call you.
Yes, thank you for the choir.
Thank you.
All right, now, speaking of zombies, France, it says, turns into a zombie nation as scary Strasbourg gets invaded by the living dead to mark the opening of a film festival.
Have you seen some of those parliament members?
This is just amazing. People were zombified by students from a professional makeup school. And the parade occurs before the European Fantastic Film Festival gets underway. It says fully grown adults lapped on fake blood and talcum powder. Isn't that disgusting? Before marching through the city of Strasbourg in eastern France for the 4th zombie walk in that city. The march signals the opening of the European Fantastic Film Festival, which presents horror, fantasy, science fiction, thriller, and animation movies until September 22nd. Now, at the same time, in Brighton, in the UK, the Beach of the Dead, there is a zombie walk, which is now in its 5th year. Notice how they all kind of start up around the same time. It saw men, women, and children don imaginative costumes and elaborate makeup, creating a gruesome sight for onlookers. Fake blood and gore could be seen dripping from many as moans and groans filled the air. Now, this I thought was interesting, too, because there's an event organizer, Kate Amer, I don't know, said the first zombie walk in 2007 attracted about 40 people, but 200 had signed up the following year, and it continues to grow. And then she said, in America and Canada, they do these massive zombie walks that get 20,000 people doing it. Are you familiar with any of those? I've not heard of that. So this is what they're telling you over in Europe.
I guess you have to be dead in order to get that email.
I guess, but so this is what they're spreading apparently in Europe, but as far as I know, that hasn't happened here in the U.S., but I'm sure this will happen at the rate that they're going. Now, again, this is designed to open up people's programming.
Because you have to be like a zombie when you're programmed.
That's
and
right.
act like a zombie.
And so here we
Mindless.
go. We're at the same time on September 13th. It says, a naked, bloody man broke into a home, which they said was vacant, jumped from a 2-story window. Why would you do that? Tackled a passerby and chewed on her head while screaming like an animal. So this, again, is the
That's
programming.
not good for a first date.
Programming getting activated.
Not
This
gonna get a
happened
second
in Holly, Pennsylvania, it says.
Everything happens in Pennsylvania because
Yeah.
it's a weird place.
Pennsylvania is a very strange place. Then, now this was also interesting to me, continuing on with your programming. There's an old saying which had to do with being tortured to death. Excuse me, it's called drawn and quartered, where they basically skin you alive and they torture you basically until you die.
That's my family used to do that to me.
Now, There were 2 parking meter repairmen from Buffalo, New York that pleaded guilty to stealing thousands of dollars from local parking meters over a period of 8 years. They titled this Drawn and Quartered. However, again, it was not written in the description of the article.
Probably quartered, meaning the quarters that they got out of the...
Yeah, I know what they mean, but... Excuse me.
So you better stop smoking.
Travis can cut that out.
You cut that
Right?
out.
Cut that out, Travis. So anyway. Now the next story that I want to continue to talk to you about, which I've talked to you about a little bit, was children being charged with murder. Now here we have a 13-year-old Florida boy who's charged with his brother's murder, and they go on to talk about how his life was punctuated by violence, Christian Fernandez. The issue is that children do not have the mental capability to know what they're doing. Obviously murder is not correct, and obviously they have problems, but to try them as an adult does not make sense. And we talked about last time that they were trying children as young as 9 for murder. And again, it doesn't make sense. However, I was beginning to put this together with other stories because I told you also, I think it was Iran, that has now legalized women, or girls as young as 10 to get married. There was a story in the U.S. here about gypsy women, and again, I don't call them exactly women at 14, young girls, young women perhaps, getting married about the age of 14. So what are they doing? They're actually allowing you to see children more as adults, which means that opens the doors for more pedophilia and for things like torture and sadism, masochism, whatever, with younger children. So they're bringing that back because a long time ago in the Middle Ages, having sex with little kids was okay. Torturing, making them work, any of that. And that's another thing. Child soldiers, you want to think about what goes on in Africa. That could possibly happen here. Let's say if we need more people to go and fight in outer space or whatever might be coming down the pike. But gradually, bit by bit, they're opening up this imprinting. And they're working with things that they figure people are not going to object to or be able to object to. Because, what are you going to say about these little kids who are murdering people? Who's going to stand up for them? They can't. They generally come from poor families, and they don't really have a choice. But this is paraded all through the news. The same thing like with these cultures where they marry the girls very young. In Iran, there's nothing we can really do about it from over here other than, of course, change our own mind patterns. The gypsy women, they have their culture. Then, of course, we have, like, say, the Mormons, the radical Mormons that marry their daughters off at very early age to older men. So it's continuing to open up that imprinting. And that, remember, they plan for generations, for decades. So you hear about it now, and you hear about it 6 years from now, and 10 years from now, and so forth. But it's opening up that imprinting in your mind. They know exactly what they're doing, so just be mindful of what's happening. The other thing, again, is that continual Nazi reference that they continue to do. We talked about all the Middle East violence, and now the Department of Homeland Security, which when that department was created, I thought Nazi Germany, because that's how they referred to their home country, was homeland. We never had that word here in the U.S. until Department of Homeland Security came up. So anyway, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are saying it could spread to the U.S. But listen to this. This is a copy of the bulletin that was obtained by CNN. It says, quote, "Although there has been no violent reaction to the film in the homeland thus far, the risk of violence could increase both at home and abroad as the film continues to gain attention." So they're again referring to the U.S. as the homeland, which tells you, a lot of things. Read between the lines. Also, the Baltic Sea and Hitler, every opportunity they bring that out. It said when the strange object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea was first spotted, some thought it might be a UFO. However, after some investigation, of course, they're saying, could it have been a part of a Nazi secret anti-submarine device? So
No, that wasn't it.
But every possibility, they're trying to tie everything back to Hitler. Last time it was the clothing store in India. Every week there's new and different things, and they get more and more inventive with how they do it. Now the other thing, remember, we're also talking about New World Order, and they're again trying to bring this in, tying this into everything. There is a lot of information out about the way that the mentally disabled autistic children are being handled in their schools and their facilities. And again, this bit by bit, I've watched this come out. The parents are installing cameras, their children are coming home with all kinds of things if they're disabled or autistic. Now we have the Judge Rottenberg Center, Rottenberg, or maybe it's Rotenberg, I don't know how they say it. I'm going to call it Rottenberg Center, to correct bad behavior for the disabled. They're using shock treatment there. The school's been around for 36 years, and because the treatment is so horrible, the UN, the United Nations, is even becoming involved. Why would the United Nations be involved in this?
Because they want to learn how to shock people.
Well, and because they want you to get the idea that the UN supersedes all the other governments. It supersedes local, it supersedes what you can do in your home, it supersedes the federal. Now we're going to UN. So again, they're opening this up for you. Continuing on with ritual. Snakes are everywhere. I hope all of you had a chance to see the snake massage that I had posted on the on our homepage, and where the woman actually was laying on her table and the snake handler puts all these non-poisonous snakes to give her a massage. And so this is the new thing, supposedly. So when I found that story at the bottom of another story, and when I went back and looked for it, I couldn't find it. So I put it in Google to see if it would come up, and what came up was this has been going on since 2007 and 2008. And this is, they're telling us it's happening in Israel. That's what they're saying now, but they've been doing it in other places since 2007 and 2008 because they're trying to see what people will accept. And this also reminds me of a lot of the rituals that they used to do for people back in ancient Egyptian times to see if they could survive specific horrors, because this is really the first step to the, guess what, the astral plane and some of the things that exist there. So if you can survive it here, then the next step is to see if you can survive it in the astral plane. And now they're going to say this is part of big fancy spa treatments, and you have to pay for it. So if you haven't seen that on my homepage, go look. Okay, now again with the snakes, Sears delivers a dishwasher with a live snake taped to the machine. That was all over the news. We also saw about an engine that was making a hissing sound. Some people who were looking for lions in South Africa's Kruger National Park stopped their car, and somehow or another some python darted, I can't imagine a python darted, but maybe it did, darted across the grass, got up under their vehicle, and wrapped itself around the engine. So of course, instead of staying in the park where the python lives, they claim that they had to drive 3 miles to the nearest lookout before attempting to remove the stowaway snake. Why didn't they do it right there in the park? It doesn't make sense.
Okay, I wouldn't try to remove it no matter where I was.
But they're in the park already. This is where the snake lives. Why not just stay there and let the snake slithers away? But again, they're making a big thing, and they had pictures of the snake all over the place. So a lot of this is much more contrived than what people realize. But your average person is thinking, you know, what am I going to do? They don't question it. I'm glad you're above average, right? Okay. Now, people would be very disappointed, I know, if I didn't continue with my breast story, right?
What you got now?
So what do we have? Of course, what do we have?
I know.
The Kate Middleton story. Now that's all over the place, and again, just like Prince Harry, like we talked about, it is all contrived.
Really, I mean, really, you're the princess, and you go out on a balcony and take your top off right by a road and by the open air. It's like, what do you expect? Now, here's the other thing, why it's contrived. If a photographer was able to get close enough to take that picture, couldn't a sniper or an assassin get that close? So where was the security? Not only could she have been shot by a camera, but she could have been shot by a weapon. Where was the security? Whoever took that picture was allowed to take that picture. And all of this hullabaloo after, it's all for public consumption.
That's right, because they want to make this normal.
They have to make it look like she was so surprised and hurt and embarrassed. Really? Well, why take your top off in the open air?
Right, and then they were talking also about how, you know, it was a shame because it was just before they went to Singapore, and about what a conservative country that Singapore is.
Oh, please. It is not.
Exactly. But that's what they want you to believe. Now, you've traveled to that area. Singapore, Malaysia, all the places where they're going.
You could do anything you want.
Absolutely. And a lot of this, like we talked about, pedophilia, all this stuff is really rampant over in a lot of these countries. And of course, how do they top it off? They top it off by having Kate and William visit the Solomon Islands and have a typical traditional greeting by, of course, topless women who give them necklaces. So they're showing you it's normal, it's natural, nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to be embarrassed about, and so on and so forth. So it's out there, but again, there is a reason.
Well, so first his pictures were there, and now her pictures. I mean, please, people, you cannot make this up. It's all staged.
It's staged, and
it's
there's
on
a reason.
Purpose.
And the other thing I keep bringing up is on the Olympics. Prince William was set by Kate all through the Olympics, except for the closing ceremony. Now, this was something somebody else proposed, and I'll say maybe yes, maybe no, but I'm going to leave this for you to think about because they had Prince Harry with her at the closing ceremony. And that supposedly William was called away to fly some important mission in, who knows.
He had to rescue someone probably.
He had to rescue somebody.
Yeah,
so there was a reason he was taken away and Harry was substituted. So somebody wrote in and said, well, do you think they're doing ritual together? And I'm saying, it's very possible. Anything is possible these days. But they're obviously imprinting you with something because the closing ceremonies were as important as the opening. Why do they stick Prince Harry in there? So anyway, my last story, which I think is interesting because this goes along with a lot of things that we talk about, color, tone, and archetype, which we are going to actually be addressing at our 10th annual conference here in St. Joseph in really 2 weeks. By the time you hear this, maybe about 10 days. It's going to be jam-packed full of information. I'm very excited about all the ways that we are going to actually teach you to open up your own hidden storehouses of knowledge, because we're talking about pyramids. Pyramids are the hyperspace symbol for storehouses of knowledge. And as you open up your own, it is being revealed here on the earth. More and more pyramids. We talked about possible pyramids in Antarctica. We've talked about them here in the U.S. And we are bringing in an expert on pyramids here, Dr. Samir Osmanagic, who not only has studied them for decades around the world, but discovered them in his own country of Bosnia. And what we saw was absolutely incredible. So we're bringing him in all the way from Bosnia to speak to you specifically on this subject. And we're also going to reveal that we have plans to lead a tour to Bosnia summer 2013, where we are actually going to show you these pyramids, take you underneath them, in them, around them, and a lot of other interesting hidden pieces of history in Bosnia. And we will be meeting the professor over there as well. So we have that going on this weekend, or the weekend of, I should say, our 10th annual conference. We have producer-director Christopher Garitano making a guest appearance and presenting us with his final version of the Montauk Chronicles movie. And we are pleased to also announce we have concert pianist Deborah Wyndham, who will be gracing us with some of her original music. And she has, over 3,000 concerts under her belt. Amazing, incredible music. So
I think she wants me to sing while she's playing that.
Yes, I did hear rumors of that.
Yeah,
she said,
heard.
Janet, Stewart wants to sing.
Yeah, I know. She gets emotional when that comes up.
Oh, please.
Yeah,
that's what she said.
So
that must be it. So, anyway. So this, plus all the information we're going to be sharing with you for the very first time. Plus we have people coming in from all over the world. Too many countries to even name at this point.
A lot of countries, a lot of continents actually.
Yes, I'll expect Antarctica probably.
Maybe.
But we do expect standing room only, so if you haven't gotten your seat, I am warning you, don't wait, because it's going to be too late if you don't do that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, as an update, is my backpack has been shipped from Ireland today, hopefully, so that I actually will have clothes to wear at the conference. I won't have my kilt.
Darn.
Yeah, if it doesn't show up in time, see, I'm not wearing anything below the waist on this show. So, see, there's nothing. See, so actually, hopefully, I will have clothes in a few days.
Yeah. So we don't want to be calling you Prince Philip.
Well, it's it is staged for the cameras here too.
It is, huh?
Yeah.
So you mean you actually want them to see the kilt you're wearing on today?
I'm not saying anything.
Okay. So, and then of course Stewart leaves pretty close after that for Russia.
My homeland.
Yes, and after that we have and I haven't put this on the site, but I have information. We've been so busy getting ready for the conference. I haven't put this up yet, but Bangkok, of course, is next for
Again
Stewart.
with the filthy language.
Yeah. Can't help that, my dear. So
who named that city? Really?
Anyway, so that's coming. What are the dates you're going to be there? Do you know offhand?
Actually, first to LA on the 4th of November, and then I leave on my birthday, the 5th. My birthday, where I do accept gifts.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to send Stewart gifts for his birthday, send them in advance before he leaves.
Yeah, I'll be actually from LA to Istanbul and then Bangkok.
Okay, so you're going to be in Bangkok approximately
10 days or so, until the 15th of November.
Okay, that watch for details on the site. There will be lectures. There will be another showing of the Montauk Chronicles.
Asian premiere.
The Asian premiere will be there at a very exclusive venue.
Yes, the International Correspondence Club.
Yeah, foreign
Correspondence Club.
Yes. And also you will be doing personal consultations there. So we'll have that information up soon. And anyway, always lots of interesting things. Oh, in January, we're going to be announcing our Immersion Week in January. OMG applications are going to be accepted soon for 2013. Lots of exciting things going on at expansions.com. Please get your membership. Remember what I told you, that the most important work we do, the most important information we share is always behind the scenes to our members who are supporting expansions.com on a regular basis so that we can continue to support you on a regular basis.
Yes,
Okay.
and we can afford to buy pants for me.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
If not, I can get just a little piece of fabric and wrap it around, put a safety pin, and you've got a kilt.
Yeah. So, are you done?
No, I have my final story, which is the best I saved to
God.
last.
What now?
And then the best one I saved to last is acoustic levitation video, which shows liquid droplets floating on sound waves in midair. Because as you know, remember color, tone, and archetype. This is a way we can actually move things, and this is the first time they're letting you see visually that sound moves. Because it is my opinion that this is a way that they moved a lot of things in ancient times, and maybe that's all I should say. Pyramid blocks and a few other things. So there's a lot that's going on with the color, tone, and archetype, and there are a lot of reasons why they don't want you to know any of that, and that's why we are teaching you about that. So we are going to continue this wonderful conversation about sound when we go into our conference the last weekend of September. And of course we have all our webinars, and those will continue to grow. Very popular. In fact, I understand that is about the second most searched place on our site now is our webinars.
Really? I can tell you what the second most searched place is on me.
Yeah, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Especially without pants.
Especially, yeah, with the safety pin and the rubber bands and
Yes,
other
it's
kinds
not easy living here, I'll tell you.
So anyway, Elke agrees.
Yeah, she's going to be going to the Vietnamese restaurant shortly after this. She's going to be the Blue Plate Special.
Yeah, anyway, she loves to let us know she's still here. So, anyway, with that said, I guess that's about...
Are you done now,
I think
finally?
I'm about done.
Gosh.
So there's never too many things I can tell. But anyway, it's always a pleasure to share what we know with you. And we so enjoy meeting you in person at all our events, through the webinars. We appreciate everything that you do to support us so that we can continue to support you on an ongoing basis with bigger and better things.
So until next time, Stewart A. Swerdlow
And Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow.
for expansions.com.
Bye-bye.